Hi, my name's Rick. I do space. I have allergies, so forgive me here. Yeah, it's funny. They were teaching me the name of the city. It is not Louisville. It's not Louisville. It's Louisville. Is that about right? Louisville. Okay. So I live in Austin, and the locals call it Austin. So, but there is a way we can tell people that aren't local, that are from California, and that's because they honk at red lights. You know, it was like, because Texas people, they'll just sit there and wait for you to finish, or they'll come up and shoot you, one of the two. So anyway, yeah, I want to talk to you a little bit today about, I found this in Goodwill, and this is going to be once a year when I come here, if I'm ever invited back after I screwed up your AV. But this will be my derby outfit here. So I have matching pants, but that was just too much, man. I just couldn't go there. So anyway, what I'm going to talk about today is what I call the Space Declaration. And I guess I can use this as my cheater. What I'm going to be dealing with here, especially since we're dealing with the crypto world, and people that are into this sort of decentralization, is the idea of sort of redefining who and what we are as a people as we move out on what I call the frontier. I have a book coming out, which I will plug again at the end. It's called the Space Manifesto. That'll be in July. And many of the ideas you're going to hear today are going to be in that book. So let's see here if I can get this operating. Uh-oh.
Did not go?
Nope.
Did something cool?
I could do hand puppets if you would. Hang on. There we go. Or do we?
No, I didn't.
Yeah. It's always the fun part of being the first speaker. We had it going a minute ago. You got something going on.
There you go.
All right.
Don't know what happened.
Just needed the pro touch here. Okay, so anyway, first thing I have to do is commercial for my company, SpaceFund. We're the world's first tokenized venture capital fund. And we started last year very small. We decided that there were too many news in the sentence when we were describing our company. We were new space, new company, new team, new concept. So we decided to go small and work our way back up. So last year we kicked off the Launchpad Fund, which is a $1 million fund. We closed it in September and oversubscribed. We've already invested in 13 space companies. And then we started SpaceFund 2, which is the blast-off fund. And we have we're getting close to about 15 million right now. Our floor for that fund is 20 million, and the ceiling is going to be 49. We have an amazing team. Megan Crawford, who some of you may run into if you're sticking around this weekend, she's coming in, and a guy named James Mertz, who comes from the oil industry. They're managing the fund, and we have an amazing group of investors. The anchor to our fund was a guy named Jed McCaleb, who you may know, created a little thing called Ripple and Stellar. And so he came in and anchored us, and we're very grateful to him for doing so. The vision of the fund is very simple: to open the space frontier for everybody, to enable people to help open the frontier, and to allow anyone who shares in that risk share in the profits. Our goal eventually is democratization of space. My nonprofit, which is being reinvented as you speak, so if you happen to hit the website, it'll be very different in about 30 days. It's called the Earthlight Foundation. People who know me know that everything I do, my for-profit, nonprofit, everything I do goes back to the cause and you'll pretty well understand my cause by the end of the talk here. So we've come through a rough time, and talking about weird pronunciation, my father's wife still refers to this as the cova. So you've had the cova? So anyway, lovely lady, and got vaccinated a while back. But yeah, we've had a rough time here. A lot of very interesting things have happened. For me, one of the big things was the triumph of science, but also the triumph of people as we've sort of come together to recognize the challenges we've had in the past and prepare for a better future.
3,
Now,
2,
part of that
1, ignition.
is exhibited by this.
We gotta get
Think
going.
about it, in the last year, we've had a lot of bad news, punctuated by this kind of thing. This is, I think we're okay, right? This is the Starship flying off of Boca Chica in South Texas that Elon's building. This is the future. It's also what I refer to as space nerd porn. Oh, baby. Now, what's amazing about this is that there's really no magic here. The only thing that Elon is doing that nobody else has been doing is he's doing something differently. It's the same metal, the same propellant, the same technology that everybody else has been using. He's just made a decision to go somewhere, to make it happen, and he's decided to do it differently than everybody else. If you're a space person, this is darn near miraculous. If you've been following this, you also know that he's been blowing up every one of these. In fact, conveniently, the video cuts away right before this thing blows up. But he does nail the landing. I just love this stuff. Huh? Yes. There we go. About 10 seconds after this shot. It's called a rapid, it's an RUD in space terms, rapid unscheduled disassembly. So this is really cool stuff. I love it. I've driven down there. That's how close you can get to the thing. It's amazing down there. And it is great, you know, and he was able to fly that Tesla. But it really isn't about these guys, these billionaires. It's about the mother world. I love this planet. I'm absolutely in love with it. I took a couple of these photographs. Texas is in bloom right now. I didn't take that one, but you know, this is an amazing planet. We are a rarity in the universe as far as we know. And we've been looking and we haven't found anything else like this yet. It's also really about human beings. It's about us. This is my daughter. She's 8 now. I'll use this to embarrass her when she turns 18. But the beauty of this shot, first time in her life she has ever touched a living flower. That's what human beings are about. That's what sentience is about. Kindness, taking care of each other. But I also believe that as human beings, we have certain rights. And I'll be coming back to this again in a minute. But I believe it is a human right to go anywhere, to build new homes, and to plant the seeds of new societies, and to be whoever you want to be. Now, until this last 100 years, we've been basically locked in a cage. Some people talk about how dangerous space is and all of this. The thing that's locked us into this cage isn't radiation, it isn't gravity, it isn't vacuum. It's our own lack of understanding, it's our own lack of imagination. That's what keeps us down here. That's why a guy like Elon Musk can roll in with the same sheet metal and propellants and begin to transform the future. It's all psychology. Now, we did try and break out once before. It was a geopolitical thing. It was a race between the Soviet Union and the United States. It began with this little ball. smaller than a soccer ball, flying around in space going, I'm here, which scared the bejesus out of the people here in the United States. And so the race began. We won that part of it. Along the way, we turned back and looked at the Earth, and frankly, really kickstarted what is called the environmental movement. It was this shot of the little blue marble from Apollo 8 that helped us begin to understand how fragile a planet we are on. But at the end of it all we had was what I call flags and footprints. We got to the moon, we took what you might call the most expensive selfie ever shot, and then we stopped. Why? Because we proved we could do it. We essentially kicked their ass. But there was no plan to follow that. And really, as a society, we turned away. I was joking with a friend recently that one of the reasons we may have turned away was they were sending back black and white footage just as color TV hit. We didn't care anymore. We had other things to think about. We also had a president that wasn't real happy about the fact that he was managing his predecessor's space program. We're still stuck in the cage after that. Arthur C. Clarke once said one of the most unfortunate things about the fact that we went to the moon was that we stopped. It's almost inexplicable. But there was a spin-off. And it wasn't what some people roll out. They'll say Velcro or Tang, and if you're of a younger generation, Tang was this sort of orange powder thing. It's like, I guess, emergency today, right? Neither of them really came from the space program, nor did Teflon. What came out of it was a lot of technologies. You're watching this using the technologies that came out of it. Whether you're on your mobile phone, whether you're watching it on a television, wherever you are, a lot of that technology came out of it. But something far more important than technology came out of it. And that was a group of kids watching TV, watching this stuff happen, who bought the dream. I call them Apollo's children, or as some friends call them, Apollo's orphans. There's a documentary, by the way, you should watch. It's called The Orphans of Apollo. It talks about some of the things that some of us did later. So in the 70s, a book came out called The High Frontier by a guy named Gerard K. O'Neill. Gerard K. O'Neill, I guess for this generation, might be the new Sagan. Gerard K. O'Neill was about to win the Nobel Prize for inventing the technology behind the super collider. He gave that up by publishing this book, which was not cool to do back then. And he began bringing a bunch of young people together who were true believers in the idea that you could open the frontier. We used to call ourselves Jerry's kids. And what would happen was we would get together and talk about the idea that Jerry had given us, which is take the tools of free enterprise and democracy and move out into the frontier, use the resources of space, and expand the domain of humanity and life. It was an exciting time. In fact, one of the guys who bought this book, or had this book and was selling it, had a little book club. His ambition was to build an online bookstore one day. His name was Jeff Bezos. He gave his graduation speech in high school basically saying, I'm going to go out and make a lot of money, and then I'm going to build settlements in space. Now, here's part of the problem, though. Because the Apollo program had basically been a government-dominated program, it stayed in the hands of the government afterwards. Gravity works. And what we got out of it was this idea of a development platform, let's call it, that is owned and operated by the government. So I have an iPhone back at my chair there, and that is, as you've heard, an application development platform. A lot of those technologies came from government, and they were given to the people. And out of that, all kinds of things happened, because now you're basically connected to a global brain. Your grandmother can send you strange pictures of cats, but you can actually ask it anything and get answers to everything. That was because the genius of the people was allowed to be applied to the challenge of the frontier that was offered to us by that platform. Well, based on its dominance, the government retained control of the application development platform for the human race in terms of the entire universe. So this is the space station. The space station basically houses normally between 3 and 6 people. I think there's several more up there right now. That's an anomaly. But a friend of mine used to run it, and he told me that it would take basically 2.75 people just to keep the lights on the station. So if you think about it, there are periods of time when there are only 3 people up there. That means 1/4 of one human being's time is available for all the dreaming, the blue skying, the IP development, the research for the entire human race as applied to the rest of the universe. No insult to government employees, but that person also happens to usually be a government employee. So that's kind of the block. That's the thing we're trying to get through right now. We have to open that up. And because it's been government dominated for so long, it has stayed very, very expensive. It's been $10,000 a pound to fly in space almost since Apollo, almost the entire time until recently. And that is when we've started to see some minds that want to break out of this cage. These minds apply their genius to it. So the costs are already dropping. Why? Because we have commercial companies operating. We have some very smart people in NASA too that have changed their way of thinking. And a lot of us fought for many years. I've been engaged in this for 35 years. We took on the aerospace establishment early on. In 1995, I testified in front of Congress and said all transportation to the station had to be commercially provided. It only took us 21 years to change that. But it's happening. And coming out of that, we have this new generation of rock stars. Now, the world characterizes these people largely as rich boys and their toys, but they're not. These are dreamers. These are people who have made their fortunes. They're not going out to make their fortune. I like to point out to people and remind people every time I can that these people made their money, or did their business to open space. They're not opening space to make it their business. And yes, they are not the most cuddly people on the planet. Let's be clear about that. But here's the old space myth, only the big guys, only major aerospace companies and giant nations and powerful militaries could have access to space. The new space reality is that people can play. Individuals can build space enterprises. And along with those billionaires, there's lots of people like me who, pointedly, I want to make this very, very clear, are not billionaires. I did say I got this in goodwill, right? I didn't have it tailored. But there are a lot of people out there who have dreams and visions that are working along with these people that are building transportation systems to open the frontier. Along with that, we're seeing micro-miniaturization. These are called CubeSats. They're standardized 10 by 10 centimeter boxes where school kids now can put payloads into space. And this really is a matter of letting the people go. I can see we have a font challenge here, but just go with me on that. This is probably going to show up a little worse later on. But we are seeing amazing things happening. This is inside the Dragon capsule. There's going to be, I think, 2 more flights this year. One of them is going to be paid participants. We don't call them tourists, by the way. I signed up the first person to buy a ticket. He was not a tourist. Underlying all of it is a core belief that I have, and I'm trying to get this across both to the people I work with in the space field and to society as a whole. It is my position, my belief, as it were, that human beings have a purpose. And that purpose is not to accumulate, a driveway full of Teslas or bigger houses or more bling or more views on your Instagram. Our purpose is bigger than that. And I break our purpose down into what I call 3 principles. To protect and expand the domain of life. Life is precious. We don't know if there are any other worlds out there. Sagan used to say billions and billions. They are, but we can't find life. Maybe it is out there. We don't know. I can only bet on the cards that I can see, and this is the hand I'm dealt. It's called Earth. So I treasure this world. So I want to protect this planet. I want to save this planet. It is a climate emergency. We have to protect this planet. By the way, a lot of the information that went into that understanding came from space. We know what our 2 sister worlds look like, Mars and Venus. And we know to some degree what may have happened to create those situations on those worlds. We can avoid that. Protect the Earth and expand the Earth. So I go one step beyond the green people. I don't want to just save this planet, I want to plant her seeds out in the universe. To preserve and advance human civilization. We're children. We're babies. If you look at the life of the time the universe has been around, if you look at the time that the Earth has been around, if I spread my arms to represent the time since the dawn of the universe, the existence of the entire human race as a species, not even civilization, is less than about a couple of molecules thick on the end of that fingernail. That's it. We're babies. We're apes. We're still barely above being apes. We're apes with guns. We're apes with guns and rockets and the ability to destroy the planet we've grown up on. We don't know what we're doing yet. We absolutely don't know what we're doing yet. But if we go into space and begin to explore out there and open it up so that we can experiment and move to the next level, we might be able to get a handle on that. And so the third part of this is to explore and experience the universe. You might call this the fun part, although I think all of it is fun. So imagine a human society that is structured around, designed around, built around, identifies itself as, participates in, encourages, and lives into a future that is based on the expansion of knowledge, on the expansion of places where we can live, on creating places that are green, taking life to worlds now dead, and to experiencing everything there is to experience in the universe. I was talking to somebody right before I got on stage about religious perspectives on this. So if you're a hardcore religious person, it's in Genesis. Basically, I'm paraphrasing, never good to paraphrase the Bible, but preachers do it all the time. God basically said to Adam and Eve, I've created the universe, now go out and name the things I have done, that I have made. They're all not on this one planet. I think it's a mandate. So here we are, at this moment of transition in civilization. We're looking out into this new realm. I love this picture, but I want to give you another picture. Just so take for example, by the way, Andrew, do you mind if I go a little bit long? You sure? Good. So I would order in food now and maybe some sleeping bags. Okay, good. Yeah. Sleeping bags, a few things like that. All right. No, I'm serious. Look, I see a vision in my head. So imagine that, and I'm going to use Western analogies. I have to use American analogies. This is my culture. I come up from this culture. I'm a Texan, etc. So if I'm offending anybody, it's not meant. And in fact, everything I'm talking about, if you dive deeply into it, you'll understand is the opposite. I'm not going out to take the lands of space from the indigenous people who are much to their chagrin being discovered or claimed by the queen across the ocean. So imagine, if you will, this sort of image where if we were standing there in the Old West and they're lined up on the Mississippi River and you've got the pioneers, whether that's the Carnegies or the people in their wagons or whatever, and they're looking out at this new frontier, and they're going to carry civilization out to this frontier. And they were able to stop for a moment and look back and say, well, how can we get it right? You see, that's the opportunity we have this time, for the first time in human history, that has never occurred in the history of humanity. We have the ability to look deeply into our past. We're looking into it all the time. It's very uncomfortable. We start discovering things that maybe have been covered up, or the domination of one sex or one society over how history has been reported. And we begin to understand that we need to look at it from multiple directions so that we can get the basic truth out of it that we can apply to the future. That is the discomfort of the day, right now. That's what's happening across the planet. That's what's happening in college classrooms, on the streets. We're finally starting to see what it is we've really done to each other and to the planet. So imagine you were standing on that frontier and you were able to have that perspective and look backwards and say, okay, here's where we screwed it up. Let's see if we can get this right next time. So maybe this time as we move forward, we aren't expanding our industrial civilization based on an attack on the ecosystem that's around us, because that's basically what we've done since we invented fire. What if we could do it this time, and instead of an elite group or one sex leading the way, we could all go together and share in that bounty? What if we could do it in such a way that we don't threaten the very planet we live on, that we don't threaten each other, and that we're basing it on a new perspective, a new way of looking at things, a new way of sharing things, a new way of working together to do something magnificent? Wouldn't that be interesting? We have that ability for the first time in human history. Science fiction. I have wonderful discussions with my friends. I don't know if you've seen The Expanse. You've probably seen Star Trek. The Expanse is very like war breaking out between Mars and the asteroid. They're called the Belters and the Earth people and all of this. And then you've got Star Trek where everybody's working together. That's what science fiction does. It gives you a choice. You know, you can go The Expanse, you can go Mad Max, or you can go Star Trek, right? That's what we're doing. Again, something that's fairly new. Only in the last couple of hundred years have we had that way of looking at the future. So here we are standing on the edge of this frontier for the first time and being able to decide how we want to do it. Now I want to give a little bit more context here. See, I believe we are at the end of the most important 100 years in the history of humanity. I'll raise the ante on that. I believe we're at the end of the most important 100 years in the history of life itself. Because indeed, if you buy into the idea that I'm saying that we might be the only planet, certainly in the solar system, where there's life, if we screw this up, there's no more life. There's no more humanity, right? So we're right there. Why do I say 100 years? The 1940s, if you go 10, 15 years on either side of the 1940s, you've got the atom bomb, you've got global travel, you've got global communication in the form of radio and television, you've got huge advancements in medicine and technologies. You have basically the creation of a world civilization within that 10 to 20 year period right there. So let's say 1940 to 2040. So within the next 10 to 20 years, we're either dead or we're going wild out into the future. We've got a magnificent tomorrow or we've killed the planet. And by the way, when people talk about climate crisis and stuff, I don't talk about the fact that, oh, the human species will die off and the trees and flowers will take back over and there'll be vines growing in this building and, you know, the bison will come back. No. If we screw this up, we're going to look like Venus. It's over. Runaway greenhouse, look it up. That's where we got the concept, was by studying Venus. So there's a lot at stake right now. It's an incredible moment, but it's really an exciting moment. Because the same technologies, the same minds, the same people, the same societies that created and perfected the technologies that can destroy the planet are the ones that can lift us off the planet and expand us into the universe. It's an amazing opportunity, and we're right in the middle of it right now. So, as we move out, I'm going to break this down. You don't have to read it all at once. As we move out, I believe it's important that we have a core philosophy. Now, why is that? Because as we move into the frontier, people are going to become more and more dispersed. And frankly, if you think about it, the way that we control things here on the Earth right now is through coercion. In other words, you can't go out in space and do anything you want because the country you were launched from will stop you. It's like these people that want to go out and start independent nations on used oil derricks, right? eventually a gunboat pulls up and says, excuse me, put your clothes on, you got to come back, right? Sorry, love what you're doing, no. So here's the declaration I've come up with here. And I'll read it to you all at once, and then we're going to break it down real quick. It is the inalienable right of all human beings to go any place in the universe, to do anything they choose to do, to use any resources they may find, to own the land or space on or within which they live, to establish homes, enterprises, and communities that are free to be governed by the inhabitants and citizens therein in any manner they see fit, within the parameters set forth in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And this is the important part. So long as they do not harm or threaten the earth, its life, and people, harm nor interfere with any other human being, their property, sacred or venerated places, or harm the ecosystems, property, sacred or venerated spaces of any other living creature. It's very simple, it's very basic, but I think if we follow this, we could have a magnificent future. So let me break it down. The inalienable right of all human and sentient beings to go any place in the universe. I don't know if that needs a lot of explanation. I think it's absolutely our right to be able to go anywhere we want to go. I believe that wherever we go, we should have the right to do anything we choose to do. Period. Or I should say semicolon, because I'm going to get to the other stuff later. But it really is a matter of human choice and freedom. And to use any resources we find out there. There are people that sometimes I deal with, and look, I'm a green, right? I'm the annoying kid in college who used to put my foot in the door when the lady was trying to shut it and going, you don't care about the whales? And I made this joke last year, it got me in a little trouble. But you know, I'm basically a tree hugger with a gun because I'm from Texas, right? So, but look, we have the right to use any resources that we find out there, especially taking them from dead places. You know, I've been confronted occasionally by some friends of mine who are very environmental, and they're like, oh, you know, you're going to go poke holes in the pristine solar system. I'm like, would you rather poke a hole in a dead rock in space or rip the heart out of a living mountain in an ecosystem on the Earth? You tell me, which one is the greener approach? And to own the land or space on or within which they live. This is a big one. This is going to be the big battle moving forward. The right to own your own land in space, which, by the way, was one of the biggest incentives ever to expand all civilizations in humanity. And there are some people that don't want that to be allowed. To establish homes, enterprises, and communities that are free to be governed by the inhabitants and the citizens therein in any manner they see fit. This is the important clause there. Within the parameters set forth in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. That's critical. One of the best documents ever written. And so long as they don't harm nor threaten the earth, its life, and people. I had an asteroid company at one point. It was one of the 2 asteroid mining companies. It really is a case of if you break it, you own it. You know, if you're starting to poke around in an asteroid, by the very moment you touch it, you've changed its orbit. And you got to be careful about that because, you know, 10 years later, you might be taking out Washington, D.C. Okay, so let me think of a place that we wouldn't want to take out. Louisville. And you cannot harm nor interfere with any other human or sentient beings. Let's get that in there early. Let's just keep that in there. You know, they have a name for that in Star Trek. And then by our consent and agreement, this is basically something I'm putting in there for the space community, for the people who go, that I would like them to agree with these ideas. And yes, I call it the mother world. I have to tell you, the fact that I am pro-environmental and pro-technology confuses the heck out of some of the people that would mess with me on this. I am greener than you are. You can't come after me over this stuff. And by the way, Jeff and Elon, you could come after them for their employment practices at Amazon, fine. But they're pouring their life and their life's money into opening the frontier for humanity and life. We can break open the cage. And it is my belief, in the core of my being, that we are here for a purpose. You and I, the kids you have at home, your family, your nation, your state, your country, whoever you belong to, whoever you are part of, you have a purpose. We have a purpose. And I believe that that purpose is grand and exciting. It is so far beyond anything that we have ever considered that we're having a hard time figuring it out even now. A quick aside. There was a friend of mine named Rob Wolcott in Chicago told me that he was doing some research and he found out that, if you remember Columbus, not one of my favorite characters, by the way, but Columbus, 1492 and all of that, he was funded by King Ferdinand and Isabella. About 20 years later, Ferdinand was writing his memoirs. He didn't mention the New World. It wasn't a big deal. It wasn't as important as the scandals going on between his kingdom and Castile and Leon and all of the others, and who was doing this to who, and this and that, and who had the biggest castle and all that. It didn't rise to that level. The only people that were excited about it were the map makers and some people that were kind of getting into it, and some of the traders were starting to, oh man, we might get a little gold out of it and stuff, but it wasn't a big deal. I want you to think about that when you hear the little occasional news stories that you hear now about what's happening, where the press treats it all as novelties, where it gets blown off and written off as, oh, it's the rich boys and their toys, or whatever. It's not a big deal until it becomes the deal. And that's where we're going right now, in the frontier. So yeah, I believe we're here for a purpose. And our purpose is to go there, to provide a future that's worth living into. So, thank you very much. This is the book I have coming out, and you can follow me at Rocket Rick. And if you're interested in investing, give me a call or say hello while I'm here in the audience. But thank you for your time, and I hope you have a good day. Thanks.